and the learning of enginemanship could be seen as a kind of discipleship at the feet of this machine. You have a driver who has all the knowledge and all the learning and all the skills. You have his disciple, who's the fireman, who's at his feet learning these skills. And the fireman, in the process of producing steam and power for the driver's hand, is actually performing a form of alchemy. He's combining the elements of earth, coal, air, oxygen and water. And with the magic of his skills, he's producing the power that drives this machine along.
Victoria Station, London. Until the mid-50s, most long-distance travel in Britain was made by express train from stations like this. From 1948, this Battle of Britain class loco hauled crack express trains for British Rail's southern region. It was operated by engine drivers like Clive Groom.
The engine's almost bursting with steam. I'm going to start it away without slipping if I can. I've got power to unleash here through this lever. The guard has just given me the tip. And with luck, we'll start away without slipping. I'm unleashing very destructive powers here. If I do it wrong, within 100 seconds, the engine will thrash itself to pieces. There's amazing power in these things.
The amazing power in these 128-ton locos allowed speeds of up to 100 miles an hour. In the cab, or footplate as it's known, the driver and his fireman enjoyed one of the classic working relationships.
I'm looking to him when the signals are his side. I'm looking to him to provide the steam when I need it. He's doing his job, I'm doing my job, but I'm reliant on him totally for what I've got under here. Got a green flag, right? You couldn't be a driver and you couldn't fire an engine because you couldn't supervise your fireman if you didn't know what he should be doing.
Though it looks like simple shoveling, the firing of a loco requires great skill to maintain steam pressure.
The pressure has to be such that you've got power under the regulator when you need it, and the heat of the steam, which is called superheat, depends on the colour of the fire. So we can get 750 degrees Fahrenheit in the steam if we've got 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit in the fire. It all depends on him. I'm listening to the beat of the engine. I'm listening to the rail joints for my speed. I don't necessarily rely on the speedometer up there. In fact, in the early days we had no speedos. We did it all by sound. I can tell when the engine's picking up its water. I can tell by smell when the engine is superheating. There's a nutty smell from the oil in the front end when the engine's superheating. And the reaction to the controls is like a supercharged car.
The locos that Clive Groom drove were specially designed for the Southern Railway. On the London North Eastern Railway, Flying Scotsman was one of a fleet built from 1922 to haul passenger express trains from London's King's Cross to Edinburgh. With 3 cylinders and enormous boilers, they should have been Britain's fastest locos. But early models were dogged by poor steaming. The Scotsman's designer, Nigel Gresley, found a solution in the engine of a rival railway, the Great Western. This is Castle-class loco Defiant. It was a type designed in 1923 to haul express trains for the Great Western Railway.
The Castle class represents for me the epitome of locomotive design of the time. And of course, they look nice. The taper boiler and all the brass work and copper work, which in itself doesn't do anything for a locomotive's performance, but certainly sets them off. And their performance, the records that they set up, particularly on the Cheltenham Flyer, the whole thing just comes together as a splendid piece of machinery. I think they're wonderful.
Footplate crews on God's Wonderful Railway, as GWR was known to its loyal fans, thought their engines were wonderful too, which was a good job because crew comfort was rather a low priority. There was little weather protection and no seats. But there were some compensations.
By modern standards, or by later standards, the Castles are a bit Spartan. They're relatively straightforward to drive. They're very responsive to both the fireman and the driver, and they were very fast. And one of the advantages of the Castle was that it kept its good riding characteristics even when it was fairly warm.
The good riding was a result of great engineering at GWR's Swindon Works. This King-class loco was designed by Charles Collett, who was also responsible for the Castles.
When Collett built the Castles, he introduced an optical alignment system into Swindon Works, which enabled them to reduce the tolerances on all the moving parts to the very bare minimum. And as a result, of course, they started off with a considerable advantage over those built in other railways. It is said that at that time, Swindon scrapped locomotives or put them in for a major overhaul at wear tolerances that the London North Eastern turned out as new.
It was this spirit of railway rivalry that contributed to Nigel Gresley's understanding of the steaming problem in his own Flying Scotsman. In 1924 at the Wembley Empire Exhibition, the best of the Great Western stood in the Palace of Engineering near the beautiful but still technically flawed Flying Scotsman.
And the two stood side by side in the exhibition hall, beautifully presented, of course, all gleaming and polished. And people remarked that although the Great Western had said quite truthfully that the Castle was the most powerful locomotive in Britain, it was very much smaller in appearance than Flying Scotsman. And I think the result of this was to sharpen the minds of the railway fraternity in particular.
The two railways swapped locos for running trials, and the smaller Castle trounced Gresley's engine. However, the real winners were Gresley and the LNER. Gresley studied the superior steam circuit of the Castle, and with this knowledge transformed his own already good engines into a 20th century legend. "4472 Flying Scotsman is the sole survivor of a fleet of 52 which heralded a new era of big engines and high-speed running. In 1927, the LNER began non-stop trial runs from London to Newcastle.